A wealthy widower father hid to test his girlfriend with his twin babies, and what he discovered about her jealousy changed their lives forever. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. The New York sky was covered by a grey mist that March morning, as if the city itself shared in the melancholy that enveloped the penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side. David Johnson, at 38 years old, held the two newborns against his chest, still trying to process the reality that had struck his life like a devastating hurricane. "Mr. Johnson, let me take little Miguel. You need to rest a bit." The soft voice of Maria echoed through the room, filled with the genuine concern that had become her trademark over the past 15 days. Maria Thompson, 45, had come into David's life through a domestic employment agency 2 weeks before the babies were born. Hailing from a small town in rural Ohio, she carried with her the simple wisdom of someone who had raised 5 children with little to spare. Her graying hair was always tied back in a low bun, and her calloused hands told the story of a lifetime dedicated to caring for others. "I can't, Maria. If I let them go, I'm afraid that—" David couldn't finish the sentence. His red eyes from crying seemed lost, as if he still expected Sarah to walk through the bedroom door with that radiant smile that lit up any room. The 3,200-square-foot apartment, with a panoramic view of Central Park, had become a silent mausoleum. The white walls, once filled with the couple's plans and dreams, now echoed only the cries of the twins and Maria's careful footsteps across the marble hallways. "Mr. Johnson, Miss Sarah wouldn't want to see you like this. She would want you to take good care of these boys and yourself." Maria approached with the delicacy of someone who understands the fragility of the moment. "When I lost my James 10 years ago, I thought the world had ended. But the children needed me, and that gave me the strength to carry on." David looked at her for the first time that day. Really looked. He saw the sincerity in her brown eyes, the silent strength that emanated from her upright posture despite years of hard work. Maria was not just an employee. She was a woman who understood loss, pain, and new beginnings. "How did you manage? How did you keep going after losing James?" David's voice came out choked, as if the words had to cross a knot in his throat. "Well, Mr. Johnson, love doesn't die when someone leaves. It transforms. It becomes care, it becomes protection, it becomes strength to move forward. Miss Sarah is here." She gently touched David's chest. "And here too." She pointed to the babies sleeping in his arms. The real estate businessman, used to leading multi-million-dollar meetings and making decisions that affected hundreds of families, felt completely lost in front of those two tiny, fragile beings. Miguel and Gabriel, born prematurely at 36 weeks, weighed just over 4.5 pounds each. During the 3 weeks they spent in the neonatal ICU at Mount Sinai Hospital, David divided his time between hospital visits and silent prayers in his home office. "Maria, I know nothing about taking care of babies. Sarah studied everything, bought all the books, took courses. I just made sure she had the best of everything." He walked to the panoramic window, watching the intense traffic on FDR Drive below. "What if I mess everything up? What if I can't be the father they deserve?" "You already are the father they deserve. Just by being here, holding them, caring. That is already so much love." Maria prepared the bottles with the precision of someone who knew the routine by heart. "Babies feel everything, Mr. Johnson. They know when they are loved." The sound of the doorbell echoed through the apartment, cutting through the intimacy of the moment. It was Dr. Henry Collins, a renowned pediatrician and family friend for years. A 55-year-old man with neatly cut grey hair and a discreet belly that betrayed the dinners at the city's fancy restaurants. "David, my friend, how are our champions doing today?" Dr. Henry entered the room with the familiarity of someone who had followed Sarah's tumultuous pregnancy. "Doctor, they are feeding well, sleeping at the right times. Maria has been taking care of everything." David tried to smile, but the effort was evident. "And you, David? When was the last time you had a decent meal? When did you sleep for more than 2 hours straight?" The doctor observed his friend's state with a clinical eye. "You can't care for them if you don't take care of yourself first." Maria, who until then had remained discreet, approached with respectful determination. "Doctor, excuse me, but I've already told Mr. Johnson this. I prepared a hearty lunch today with those ribs he likes, baked beans, but he hasn't eaten properly in days." "Maria is right, David. Sarah made me promise to take care of you if something happened." Dr. Henry stopped abruptly, realizing he had touched on a wound still very fresh. The silence that followed was filled only by the soft breathing of the babies. David sat in the chair next to the crib, finally allowing the exhaustion to show in his posture. "Did she talk to you about this? About the possibility of not surviving the delivery?" David's voice was almost a whisper. "Sarah was a very intelligent woman, David. She knew the risks, but she still chose to move forward because the love you both felt for these babies was greater than any fear." Dr. Henry approached, and he placed his hand on his friend's shoulder. "And she specifically asked me to find someone special to help you, someone who understands love, real family." David looked at Maria, who at that moment was rocking Michael with a soft lullaby in a thick accent. Her experienced hands held the baby with the confidence of someone who had been through this many times before. There was something profoundly comforting in the way she moved around the room, as if she knew exactly what each cry meant, every movement of the small bodies. "You know, Dr. Henry, I built an empire from nothing. I started by selling small apartments in the East Side, and now I run one of the largest construction companies in New York. I've always known exactly what to do, how to solve any problem." David stood up and walked to the crib where Ethan slept peacefully. "But in front of them I feel like the most incompetent man in the world." "And that's how it should be, Mr. David." Maria spoke without stopping to rock Michael. "Being a father isn't about knowing everything. It's about learning every day, making mistakes and trying again. It's about loving even when you're scared." At that moment, Ethan opened his little eyes and made a face that could mean hunger, sleep, or simply the discomfort of being in a new world. David extended his pinky finger, which was immediately grabbed by his son's tiny hand. "See? He already knows you're his dad." Maria smiled, and for the first time in weeks, David managed to muster a genuine smile. The afternoon fell over New York, painting the sky in shades of orange that reflected in the windows of the surrounding buildings. It was the beginning of a new phase, full of uncertainties, but also of a quiet hope that began to blossom in that apartment that was slowly starting to feel like a home again. 3 months had passed since that devastating first day, and the apartment in the Upper East Side was beginning to pulse with new energy. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and homemade sugar bread, a recipe that Maria had brought from her hometown, replaced the sepulchral silence that had once dominated the space. "Oh, my darlings, you woke up early today, didn't you?" Maria hummed softly while changing the twins' diapers on the changing table that had been transformed into a nursery. "Daddy has already gone to work, but Aunt Maria is here to take care of you." David had gradually resumed his routine at Johnson and Associates, located on 5th Avenue. His absences during the first months had generated speculation in the real estate market, but his partner, Patricia Lombardi, a determined 42-year-old woman, had held things together with military efficiency. "David, you need to show up at the charity event for the Hope Charity Institute tonight. I know it's still hard, but clients are asking for you." Patricia spoke on the phone while flipping through contracts on her glass desk. It's important to show that the company is stable. On the other end of the line, David hesitated. The idea of returning to social events, having to smile and network when his life was still under reconstruction, felt daunting. Patricia, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And the boys, they still wake up several times during the night. From what you tell me, Maria is an angel. She can handle everything for a few hours. You need to get back to living, David. Sarah wouldn't want you to isolate yourself forever. When David arrived home that afternoon, he found a scene that warmed his heart in an unexpected way. Maria was sitting in the living room chair with Michael in her lap, singing a country ballad, while Ethan slept in the baby carrier beside her. The golden light of the late afternoon streamed through the panoramic windows, creating a cozy atmosphere that contrasted with the modern coldness of the decor. How were our little princes today? David loosened his Italian tie and sat on the beige leather sofa, observing the tranquility of the scene. Oh, Mr. David, they were angels. Michael is already trying to hold the bottle by himself. Look at that. Maria positioned the bottle in the baby's tiny hands, who made an adorable effort to hold it. And Ethan spent the whole afternoon talking to me. That boy is going to be as chatty as his dad. David laughed, a sound that hadn't echoed through that apartment in months. Maria, Patricia is pressuring me to go to a charity event tonight. It's important for business, but nothing, Mr. David. You need to go out, see people, get back to living. I'll stay here with the boys. I've raised 5. I know exactly what to do if any problems arise. Are you sure? They might wake up several times during the night, and I don't want to overwhelm you. Maria looked at David with that maternal expression that had become familiar. Mr. David, taking care of these boys is not a burden for me. It's pure joy. It's been a long time since I felt so useful, so alive. The Hope Charity Institute was celebrating that June night. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel had been decorated with arrangements of white orchids and golden lighting, creating an elegant atmosphere for the elite of New York. David wore a Hugo Boss tuxedo, his brown hair slicked back, highlighting the green eyes that Sarah always said were his trademark. David Johnson, what a joy to see you here. Mrs. Margaret Smith, president of the institution for 15 years, approached with the characteristic enthusiasm of charity event organizers. A 68-year-old lady with impeccably styled platinum hair and a set of jewelry worth more than many apartments. Mrs. Margaret, thank you for the invitation. It's a very important cause. David forced the social smile he had perfected over years of networking. And how are the babies? I heard they're twins. What a blessing. She approached with the forced intimacy typical of high society in New York. They're well, growing healthy. I have an exceptional caregiver looking after them. Oh, how wonderful. A reliable caregiver is everything in this life. I can only imagine how difficult it must be to raise 2 babies alone. Mrs. Margaret paused thoughtfully. By the way, I want you to meet someone very special. It was then that David saw her for the first time. Jessica Anderson approached with the natural elegance of someone born into privilege. At 32, she was a socialite known in the high society circles of New York, holding a degree in international relations from NYU, but she had never really needed to work. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, and the navy blue Dolce & Gabbana dress accentuated her figure, sculpted by years of Pilates at the club. David, this is Jessica Anderson. Jessica, this is David Johnson, whom I've already told you about. One of the most promising entrepreneurs in New York. Nice to meet you, David. Margaret told me about your situation. I mean about the babies. It must be very challenging. Jessica extended her hand with a smile that seemed genuinely warm. Thank you, Jessica. Yes, it has been an adjustment, but we are managing. David noticed how she had avoided mentioning the death of Sarah directly, a sensitivity he appreciated. I can imagine. I've always admired men who take the responsibility of fatherhood seriously. It's rare these days. She accepted the champagne flute offered by a waiter, her blue eyes maintaining eye contact with David. The conversation flowed naturally during dinner. Jessica showed genuine interest in David's business, asked insightful questions about the real estate market, and shared amusing stories about her volunteer work. She was cultured, witty, and David had to admit very attractive. "Do you like kids, Jessica?" The question slipped out before David could stop himself. "I love them. I've always wanted a big family. I think children bring a unique joy to a home." She smiled, and for a moment, David allowed himself to imagine what it would be like to have a partner to share the responsibilities and joys of parenthood. Meanwhile, in the Upper East Side apartment, Maria was rocking Ethan, who had woken up crying around 11 p.m. Michael was sound asleep in the crib next to him, seemingly immune to his brother's protests. "Calm down, my prince. Aunt Maria is here. Are you hungry, or do you just want some cuddles?" She prepared the bottle with the expertise of someone who could do it with her eyes closed. "Your dad stepped out for a bit, but he'll be back soon. He's learning to live again, you know. And that's good for you too." Ethan gradually calmed in Maria's warm arms as she began to hum an old lullaby she had learned from her own mother decades ago in the Appalachian Mountains. "Sleep, sleep, my boy. The rain will soon pass. Tomorrow the sun will shine for us to play." Her soft voice echoed through the room, creating an atmosphere of safety and love that the babies had already learned to associate with her presence. When David arrived home around midnight, he found Maria organizing the kitchen, the babies sleeping peacefully in their cribs. "How was the night? Did they give you trouble?" David checked on his children, gently kissing each of their foreheads. "They were little angels, Mr. David. Ethan woke up just once, had his bottle, and went back to sleep like a dream." "And how was the event? You seem different." David smiled, realizing that he truly felt different. "It was good, Maria, very good. I met someone interesting. Maybe it's time to start thinking about rebuilding some aspects of my life." Maria smiled sincerely. "That's great, Mr. David. You deserve to be happy, and the boys deserve to see their father smiling too." That night, for the first time in months, David slept with a sense of hope in his heart. The future, which had seemed uncertain and bleak for so long, was beginning to show small glimpses of possibilities. He didn't yet know that this hope would be tested in ways he could never imagine. August arrived with its chilly mornings and grey skies, typical of New York winters. In the Upper East Side apartment, a warm routine had been established. The twins, now 5 months old, were beginning to show distinct personalities. Michael was more restless and curious, while Ethan preferred to observe the world with serene eyes before reacting. "Mr. David, you seem nervous today. I can tell by the way you're stirring your coffee." Maria observed David in the gourmet kitchen, where he had been absent-mindedly stirring the drink for 5 minutes. "It's just that Jessica is coming to meet the boys for the first time today. We've been dating for almost 3 months, and I want everything to be perfect." David wore a light blue dress shirt that highlighted his green eyes, a careful choice for the date. His relationship with Jessica had naturally evolved after that first night at the charity event. Dinners at upscale restaurants in Soho, movie nights at the shops at Columbus Circle, strolls through Central Park on weekends. Jessica had always been understanding of the limitations that parenthood imposed on David's schedule, never complaining when he had to cancel a commitment because the babies were sick or when conversations were interrupted by calls from Maria. "You don't need to be nervous. If she truly likes you, she will like the boys too. Children are pure love. It's impossible not to like them." Maria adjusted the flower arrangements she had prepared around the house, small details that made the environment even more welcoming. "Maria, could you maybe step out a bit when she arrives? Go to the market or visit your friend, Mrs. Rosa. I want her to feel comfortable with the babies, without any rush." A barely perceptible shadow passed over Maria's eyes, but she nodded with a smile. "Of course, Mr. David. I'll take the opportunity to do the shopping for Sunday's lunch." At exactly 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. David quickly checked his appearance in the entrance hall mirror before opening the door. Jessica was radiant, wearing a chic, casual outfit, designer jeans and a white silk blouse, her hair loose framing her face. Appalachian Mountains, a discreetly made-up face. "Hi, love. What's with the nerves? I can feel it from here." She gently kissed him, carrying a bag from the store. "I brought some little gifts for the princes. Jessica, you didn't have to, but thank you." David led her through the living room towards the nursery, where Maria was organizing some educational toys on the colorful rug. "Maria, this is Jessica, the one I've told you so much about." David made the introductions with evident pride. "Nice to meet you, Jessica. David speaks wonders about your work with the babies." Jessica extended her hand with a smile that seemed genuine and warm. "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Jessica. The boys are eager to meet you. They just finished feeding and are in good spirits," Maria replied with the respectful politeness she always maintained with David's visitors. Michael was in the baby carrier, babbling to himself and energetically kicking his legs, while Ethan rested in Maria's lap, observing everything with his curious little eyes. "Oh my God, David, they are so beautiful. And how they've grown since the pictures you showed me." Jessica approached cautiously, clearly impressed. "Can I hold him?" "Of course. Michael loves new arms. He's more sociable than his brother." David picked up Michael and offered him to Jessica, who received him with a mix of care and delight. "Hi, my prince. What a cutie you are." Jessica spoke in the high-pitched voice people often use with babies, but there was a genuine naturalness in her gestures. Maria watched the scene with discreet attention, noticing how Jessica held Michael with care, but without the exaggerated fear of someone who has never been around children. "Mrs. Jessica, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to the store for a quick shopping trip. If you need anything, Mr. David knows where to find everything for the boys." Maria stood up, handing Ethan to David. "Sure, Maria. Thank you for everything." Jessica smiled as Michael played with her blonde waves. After Maria left, the atmosphere in the apartment became more intimate. Jessica sat on the living room sofa with Michael, who seemed fascinated by her golden earrings, while David settled beside her with Ethan. "David, they really are special. I can feel the peace that reigns in this house. Maria takes such good care of them, doesn't she?" Jessica observed the details of the environment, the organized toys, the perfectly folded diapers, the always pleasant temperature of the apartment. "She's an angel, Jessica. I don't know what we would do without her. The boys adore her, and I trust her completely." David kissed Ethan's forehead, who had begun to doze off in his arms. It must be a relief to have someone so reliable, especially for a single man raising twins. Jessica paused, as if carefully choosing her next words. "David, can I ask a somewhat personal question?" "Of course, love. Go ahead." Have you thought about what it will be like when we decide to take the next step in our relationship? I mean, if things continue to evolve between us?" David felt his heart race. It was the first time Jessica openly touched on the subject of a shared future. "Jessica, of course I think about it, but I want you to know that my children will always be my priority. Any woman who comes into my life needs to understand and accept that." And that's exactly why I'm falling for you, David. A man who puts his children first is the kind of man I've always dreamed of finding." She leaned in and kissed him gently, careful not to wake Michael, who had fallen asleep in her arms. The rest of the afternoon passed in perfect harmony. Jessica helped David with the baby's routine, changing diapers with a few basic instructions, preparing bottles, and even managed to make Ethan laugh with her funny faces. It was evident that she was genuinely trying to connect with the boys. When Maria returned from the store around 6 p.m., she found the family on the living room rug. David and Jessica were sitting, playing with the twins, who seemed completely at ease with the presence of the new female figure. "How was the afternoon? Did the boys behave?" Maria asked while organizing the groceries in the kitchen. "They were perfect, Maria. Jessica has a natural way with them. I think she won 2 new hearts today." David smiled with a satisfaction he hadn't shown in a long time. "That's great, Mr. David. It's important for the boys to get used to people you like," Maria replied sincerely, but David didn't notice the slight hesitation in her voice. Jessica stayed for dinner, a spontaneous decision that arose when Michael began to cry just as she was supposed to leave. "Let me try to calm him," Jessica offered, picking up the baby and gently walking around the living room. To everyone's surprise, Michael stopped crying almost immediately. "There you go, my prince. Was it just love you wanted, huh?" David watched the scene with evident emotion. For the first time since Sarah's death, he could clearly visualize a future where his children would have a present and loving maternal figure. Maria made a special lasagna today. "Why don't you stay for dinner?" David suggested, hopeful. "I would love to, but only if Maria doesn't mind more work." "Not at all, Mrs. Jessica. It's a joy to have you here. And the lasagna has a special cheese I bought from Mr. John's Deli just down the street." Maria smiled, but again David didn't realize that the smile didn't fully reach her eyes. Dinner was lively and relaxed. Jessica enthusiastically praised Maria's cooking, asked questions about her family recipes, and showed genuine interest in stories from the Appalachian Mountains. It was, in every way, the perfect evening that David had imagined. When Jessica finally left around 10 p.m., David felt more optimistic about the future than he had at any moment since the tragedy that had changed his life. "Maria, thank you for making this evening so special. Jessica was enchanted with you, with the guys, with everything." David was helping to organize the room while Maria washed the last dishes. "I'm glad, Mr. David. Jessica seems like a nice girl, and the boys liked her too." Maria dried her hands on a dish towel, avoiding looking directly at David. "Are you okay? You seem a bit tired today." "No, Mr. David, everything is fine. It was just a busy day, but it was good." She smiled, this time more genuinely. "You deserve to be happy, and if Jessica makes you happy, then I'm happy too." That night, David went to sleep dreaming of possibilities, dreaming of a future where he wouldn't be alone in the journey of raising his children, dreaming of a complete family again. What he didn't know was that not all dreams unfold as we expect, and that sometimes the people we love the most are also the ones we can hurt the easiest, even without realizing it. September arrived with the first promises of spring in New York. The apartment in the Upper East Side was buzzing with preparations for the traditional company party of Johnson and Associates, which would take place the following weekend. Patricia had insisted that it be held in David's own apartment, arguing that it would be an opportunity to showcase his personal stability to clients and investors. "Mr. David, where would you like me to put these decorations?" Maria held a colorful roll of party decorations, her hair tied up in a patterned scarf she had brought from the Appalachian Mountains. "Maria, let the decoration team handle that. You already have enough work with the boys." David checked a list on his tablet, coordinating the various suppliers moving through the apartment. The twins, now 6 months old, were becoming more active and expressive. Michael could already sit up with support and showed an insatiable curiosity for everything around him, while Ethan preferred to observe the activity in the house with his attentive eyes, smiling discreetly at anyone who approached. "David, darling, this party is going to be amazing." Jessica entered the apartment carrying 2 bags from Saks Fifth Avenue, her Louboutin heels echoing on the marble floor. "I bought a beautiful themed outfit for you, and I also brought something special for the babies." Over the past 2 months, Jessica had become a constant presence in David's life. She spent 3 or 4 afternoons a week at the apartment, always finding reasons to stay for dinner. She had shown increasing interest in the twins, even suggesting changes to the nursery decor and commenting on the children's feeding routine. "What a sweetheart you are!" Jessica went directly to the rug where Michael was playing with colorful blocks, completely ignoring Maria, who was organizing the baby's clean clothes on the sofa. "Michael, my prince, look how big you've gotten." She picked the baby up with familiarity, but David noticed a certain abruptness in her movements that he hadn't noticed before. "Jessica, be careful. He's still very small." David instinctively stepped closer. "Oh, David, don't be overprotective. I know how to take care of kids." Jessica laughed, but there was a hint of irritation in her voice. "Maria, you don't need to stand there. I'm sure there's plenty to do in the kitchen." Maria quickly glanced at David, who was distracted checking emails on his phone, and simply nodded. "Yes, Ms. Jessica. Excuse me." "Honey, I need to make a quick stop at the office. Patricia wants to go over the final details for the party. Are you guys okay here?" David kissed Ethan's forehead, who was in the baby carrier. "Of course. I'll take some time with my princes. Maria will take care of everything, right?" Jessica smiled, but again David was too busy to notice the coldness in her eyes when she looked at the housekeeper. "I'll be back in 2 hours at most. Call me if you need anything." David quickly kissed Jessica and headed for the door, leaving his Hugo Boss suit hanging on the dining room chair. That was when David's life changed forever, though he didn't know it yet. 20 minutes after he left, David realized he had forgotten important documents on the table at home. He decided to quickly return to get them. As he opened the apartment door with his key, he heard raised voices coming from the nursery. Instinctively, instead of announcing his arrival, David walked silently down the marble corridor, his footsteps muffled by the Persian rug. What he saw as he approached the slightly open door of the baby's room left him paralyzed in shock. "I already told you not to stick to them all the time." Jessica's voice was filled with a rage David had never witnessed before. "You're a housekeeper, not their mother." Maria was standing next to Ethan's crib, who was crying inconsolably while holding Michael, who had also started to cry at the noise. "Miss Jessica, I was just trying to calm Ethan. He had colic and—" Maria's voice trembled, a mix of confusion and fear. "Give him here. You don't know anything." Jessica yanked Michael from Maria's arms with a violence that made the baby cry even louder. "And stop saying they are your boys. They are not yours. They will never be yours." David hid behind the heavy curtain in the hallway, his heart pounding so hard he feared they could hear him. He had never seen this version of Jessica, her face twisted with rage, her gestures abrupt, the cruelty in her voice. I didn't say that, Miss Jessica. I just—" Maria tried to defend herself, but her words came out in gasps. "Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I don't see how you're trying to get between me and David, how you want to outshine me?" Jessica rocked Michael roughly, trying to make him stop crying. "You're just a housekeeper from a little town in the Appalachian Mountains. You will never be anything more than that." Tears began to stream down Maria's face, but she remained dignified in silence, simply extending her arms in. Ethan continued to cry in the crib. "And another thing," Jessica continued, her voice dropping to a venomous tone. "When I marry David, a lot is going to change around here, especially your habit of acting like you're part of the family." "Mrs. Jessica, I never—" Maria finally managed to pick Ethan up, and the baby immediately began to calm down in her familiar arms. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You think they prefer you over me? But that's going to end. You can be sure of that." Jessica finally got Michael to stop crying, but her movements remained abrupt and impatient. David was in total shock. The woman he had known over the past few months, caring and understanding, had completely disappeared. In her place was a cruel, petty person, clearly consumed by jealousy over Maria's relationship with her children. "You know what? You can go prepare the boys' snack, and when you come back, I want you to remember your place in this house." Jessica practically threw Michael back into Maria's arms. "Yes, Mrs. Jessica." Maria left the room with both babies, her dignity unshaken despite the humiliation she had just suffered. David remained hidden. For a few more minutes, listening to Jessica grumble alone in the room, complaining about the stuck-up maid and making plans about the changes she would make when she was the lady of the house. When he finally managed to move, David quietly left the apartment, went down to the garage and sat in his BMW for nearly an hour, trying to process what he had witnessed. How had he been so wrong? How had he not seen Jessica's true personality? And more importantly, how could he protect Maria and her children from someone who clearly saw the maid as a threat to be eliminated? When he returned to the apartment an hour later, he announced his arrival loudly from the entrance. "I'm home. How are our little princes?" Jessica appeared in the living room with a radiant smile, as if nothing had happened. "Hi, love. They were a bit restless earlier, but Maria managed to calm them down. She really has a special way with them." The hypocrisy in Jessica's voice made David's stomach churn. He looked at Maria, who was organizing toys in the corner of the room. Her eyes were slightly red, but she maintained her usual professional composure. "Maria, are you okay? You look a little tired." David tried to catch her gaze. "I'm fine, Mr. David. The boys were a bit fussy today, but they've gotten past that phase." She smiled, but David could now see the sadness behind the smile. That night, after Jessica left and Maria retreated to her room, David stayed awake until dawn, filled with anguish and guilt. How had he allowed someone to treat Maria that way in his own home? How had he not realized that the woman he was falling in love with was capable of such cruelty? Even more painful was the realization that Maria had suffered in silence to avoid ruining his happiness. The woman who cared for his children with genuine maternal love had been humiliated and threatened, and yet she hadn't said a word. David looked at the twins sleeping peacefully in their cribs and made a decision that would definitively change the course of their lives. He would not allow anyone to hurt the people he loved most in this world, not even the woman he thought he loved. The summer festival would be next weekend, but David knew that before that, he would need to make difficult decisions that might cost him his own happiness, but were necessary to protect his true family. The days that followed the devastating discovery seemed to drag on in slow motion for David. He observed every interaction between Jessica and Maria with a new perspective, and what he saw left him increasingly disturbed. How had he been so blind? "Mr. David, you hardly ate anything at lunch. Are you feeling okay?" Maria was clearing the plates from the dining table, her voice filled with the maternal concern that had become so familiar. "I'm fine, Maria, just a lot on my mind with this Saturday's festival." David lied, unable to look her directly in the eyes. Guilt was eating him alive. "How are the boys?" Michael is trying to crawl. He keeps dragging himself across the rug, trying to reach his toys. She smiled, but David could now see that the sparkle in her eyes had faded in recent days. And Ethan is getting smarter every day. Yesterday he watched me prepare his baby food as if he were trying to memorize the recipe. It was Thursday afternoon when Jessica arrived for another of her regular visits. David watched her with critical eyes for the first time since they started dating. How had he not noticed the artificiality of some of her smiles before? The way her eyes hardened when she looked at Maria. "Hi, love. I came to see how the preparations for Saturday are going." Jessica kissed him on the cheek, leaving a trace of the French perfume that cost more than the monthly salary of many people. "Where are my little princes?" "They're in the nursery with Maria. They just woke up from their afternoon nap." David led her down the hallway, but this time he paid attention to every detail of her behavior. In the room, they found Maria changing Ethan's diaper while softly humming a country ballad. Michael was in the crib, playing with a colorful rattle that Maria had made with plastic bottles and beans. "Maria, could you give us some time alone with the kids?" Jessica's request came with an apparently sweet tone, but David could now detect the disguised order. "Of course, Mrs. Jessica. I'll prepare their afternoon snack." Maria gently kissed Ethan's forehead before leaving, a gesture so natural and loving that David felt his chest tighten. As soon as Maria left, David watched closely how Jessica interacted with the children. Babies. His gestures were correct, but there was an underlying impatience, a coldness he had misinterpreted as the caution of a novice. "Ethan is getting chubby, isn't he? Maybe Maria is overdoing it with the food," Jessica commented casually as she picked up the baby. "Dr. Henry said they are at the ideal weight, Jessica." "Maria strictly follows the medical guidelines," David replied, feeling compelled to defend the nanny. Of course. I just think that sometimes she is, how can I say, a bit too possessive with them." Jessica paused deliberately. "Don't you find it strange how she always finds an excuse to be around when we're with the babies?" David felt anger rise in his throat. How dare Jessica twist Maria's dedicated care into something negative? "Maria is careful because she is responsible for my children, Jessica. It's her job." "Yes, I know, but sometimes I get the impression that she forgets her place here." Jessica lowered her voice as if she were about to share a secret. "Yesterday, for example, when you went to pick up the suit from the dry cleaners, she made a comment about how our boys are growing up fast. Our boys, David, as if she were part of the family." David needed all his self-control not to explode. He had witnessed the actual scene the week before and knew exactly how Jessica had humiliated Maria for using that affectionate expression. "Maria has been taking care of my children for over 6 months, Jessica. It's natural for her to feel affection for them." "Of course it is. I just think that, well, when we get married, it will be important to establish some clearer boundaries. For everyone's sake." Jessica smiled, but her eyes remained cold. The mention of marriage sent a shiver down David's spine. How had he come so close to making such a monumental mistake? That night, after Jessica left, David found himself alone in the living room with Maria, who was folding the clean clothes of the babies. It was the first time in days they were alone, without Jessica's intimidating presence. "Maria, can I ask you a question?" David sat on the sofa, watching her skilled hands organize the small pieces of clothing. "Of course, Mr. David. What would you like to know?" Do you feel comfortable here? I mean, are you happy working with us?" He chose his words carefully, hoping she would understand that he was opening a door for confidences. Maria paused folding the clothes for a moment, her hands trembling almost imperceptibly. "Mr. David, this house is a blessing in my life. Taking care of Michael and Ethan is the most important thing I've ever done." She paused, as if struggling with something internally. "Why do you ask? Did I do something wrong?" The fear in her voice broke David's heart. How had Jessica managed to make such a strong and dignified woman feel insecure in her own workplace? "No, Maria, you haven't done anything wrong, ever. I just want to make sure you feel valued here." Tears began to form in Maria's eyes, but she held them back with determination. "Mr. David, I know my place. I am a nanny, I know that. But these boys—" She looked in the direction of the nursery, where the twins were sleeping. "They have become pieces of my heart. I know I have no right to feel this way, but, Maria, you have every right to love every right. Children, I thank God every day that you are here taking care of them." David stood up and approached her. "Never, ever let anyone make you feel less for that." She looked him in the eyes for the first time in the conversation, and David saw a mix of gratitude and something that seemed to suspect he knew more than he was saying. "Thank you, Mr. David. You are very kind to me and to the boys." That morning, David made a decision that had been maturing since the traumatic discovery a few days earlier. He could no longer live pretending he didn't know who Jessica really was. He couldn't allow her to continue humiliating Maria, or, worse, to become the stepmother of his children. On Friday morning, he called Jessica. "Honey, good morning. Is everything ready for our party tomorrow?" Her voice was cheerful, full of anticipation. "Jessica, we need to talk. Can you come over this afternoon?" "Sure. Is everything okay? You seem strange." "Everything is fine. We just need to discuss a few things." "What mystery is this? You're making me curious." She laughed, clearly unaware of what was to come. "I'll see you at 3 p.m., okay?" "Okay, honey, I love you." David hung up without responding to the "I love you" for the first time in months. His heart was heavy, but the decision was made. He needed to protect his family, the real family that had formed in that apartment over the past few months. He looked out the window at the bustling city below, people rushing after their dreams, their loves, their lives. In a few hours, he would break a woman's heart and possibly his own, but he would do it to protect the people he truly loved. Maria appeared in the living room, carrying both babies, who had woken up almost at the same time. "Good morning, my princes. How did you sleep?" David kissed each of them, feeling a wave of protective love that confirmed his decision. "They slept like two little angels, Mr. David. They are very alert today." Maria smiled, and for the first time in days, the smile seemed genuine. "Maria, tomorrow after the party, I want to talk to you about some changes I'm going to make. Good changes." She looked at him with curiosity, but simply nodded. "As you wish, Mr. David." The afternoon approached, bringing with it one of the most difficult conversations of David's life. But he was ready. His children and Maria deserved nothing less than his complete loyalty and protection. Friday afternoon arrived, heavy with tension. David had spent the morning mentally reviewing everything. As words I would say to Jessica, every argument I would use, every possible reaction from her that I would need to face. Maria noticed his nervousness during lunch, but respectfully did not ask questions. "Mr. David, I'm taking the boys to the park downstairs. It's a lovely sunny day. It will do them good." Maria was packing, her bag with everything she needed for the outing. Diapers, bottles, sunscreen, toys. "That's a good idea, Maria. Stay as long as you want. I need to have an important conversation here with Jessica." She stopped packing the bag and looked at him directly. "Mr. David, I don't know what happened, but if it's something I did—" "It's not anything you did, Maria. On the contrary." David gently touched her arm. "You can relax. Everything will be fine." Michael and Ethan were beaming in the double stroller, observing everything with curiosity as Maria took them to the elevator. David kissed them before they left, feeling an inexplicable need to show his love for them. At exactly 3 p.m., Jessica rang the doorbell. David took a deep breath before opening the door. She looked impeccable as always, wearing a navy blue Chanel suit and carrying a bag of gourmet chocolates from a French patisserie located at the Shops at Columbus Circle. "Hi, love. I brought those gourmet chocolates you adore." She kissed him on the cheek, but David subtly stepped back. "Where are my princes?" "They went out with Maria to enjoy the sun at the park." "Jessica, let's sit down. I need to talk to you about something important." Something in David's tone made her smile falter slightly. "Is everything okay? You've been acting strange since yesterday." They sat on the sofa in the living room, the panoramic view of New York City serving as a backdrop for what would be one of the most difficult conversations of David's life. "Jessica, I discovered some things in the last few days that made me rethink our relationship." "What things? What are you talking about?" Now she looked genuinely concerned. David studied her for a moment, searching for any trace of the sweet and understanding woman he had fallen in love with, but all he saw now was a carefully constructed performance. "I saw how you treat Maria when you think no one is watching, Jessica." The blood drained from her face instantly. For a few seconds there was only silence, broken only by the distant sound of traffic below. I don't understand what you mean." But her voice had already lost its usual confidence. "Last week, when I came back to pick up some documents, I heard everything. I saw how you humiliated her, how you ripped my children from her arms, how you threatened her." David kept his voice calm but firm. "I saw who you really are, Jessica." The mask finally fell. Jessica's shoulders stiffened and her blue eyes turned as cold as ice. "And so? She's a housekeeper, David. She was getting involved where she shouldn't. Getting involved where she shouldn't. She was taking care of my children, which is exactly her job. Her job is to clean the house and prepare food. It's not to pretend to be their mother." Jessica abruptly stood up, her composure completely lost. "Can't you see how she manipulates the situation? How she wants to take my place?" David was shocked by the vehemence and distortion in her voice. "Your place? What place, Jessica? You can barely stand 5 minutes alone with my children without complaining." "Because they're addicted to her. She did this on purpose so they would prefer her over anyone else." Jessica began pacing the room, gesturing frantically. "Are you blind, David? Don't you see that she's interested in you? That she's using the babies to get close to you? Maria is an upright, hard-working woman who cares for my children with genuine love, something that clearly you are incapable of understanding." David also stood up, keeping his distance from her. "Genuine love?" Jessica laughed bitterly. "She's being paid for that. It's a job, David. You've romanticized the situation because you're needy and desperate for help." The cruelty of her words hit David like a slap, but it also freed him from any remaining doubt about his decision. "It's over, Jessica. Our relationship is over." "What?" She stopped walking and stared at him as if she hadn't heard correctly. "You heard. I can't be with someone who treats the people I love with such disdain. I can't allow someone like you to become a stepmother to my children." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stared at him with an expression that oscillated between shock, anger, and disbelief. "You're breaking up with me because of a housekeeper?" Each word dripped with venom. "I'm breaking up with you because you've shown me who you really are, and that person has no place in my life or in my children's lives. You'll regret this, David." Jessica grabbed her Gucci bag and headed for the door. "You'll regret it when you realize you're throwing away the best thing that could happen to you because of an illusion. The only thing I regret is not having seen your true face sooner." Jessica paused at the door and turned to him one last time. Do you think you'll find another woman of our social standing who will accept raising 2 children from another? Do you think any woman of our class will want to compete with a housekeeper for your affection? If that's the price of finding a woman of our level, I'd rather be alone. Perfect. When you tire of playing family with the housekeeper and realize you need a real woman, don't come looking for me. She slammed the door hard enough to make the pictures on the wall shake. David stood in the empty room for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. He felt exhausted, as if he had run a marathon, but he also felt free. Free from the need to pretend, to ignore signs, to compromise his values out of fear of loneliness. When Mendoza Group, shopping na Zona Sul, mall in Southside Maria, returned with the twins an hour later and found David in the kitchen preparing coffee. How was the park? Did the boys behave? They were little angels, Mr. David. Michael was fascinated by the birds, and Ethan slept almost the entire time in the stroller. She immediately noticed that something had changed in the atmosphere. Has Mrs. Jessica already left? Yes, she has left, and she won't be coming back, Maria. Maria stopped taking the babies out of the stroller and looked at him attentively. Mr. David, if it's because of me, it is because of you. Yes. David approached her, seeing the instant fear in her eyes. Because you helped me realize what is truly important. Because you showed me what true, unconditional, dedicated love is. Tears began to stream down Maria's face. You, Michael, and Ethan are my family, Maria. The family that formed naturally, with love and mutual respect. I won't allow anyone to threaten that. Mr. David. She couldn't finish the sentence, too emotional to speak. Maria, I want you to know that you will always have a place here with us, not as a housekeeper, but as family, because that's what you are. That night, for the first time in months, David slept with a clear conscience. He had made the right choice, protecting the people he truly loved. The future was uncertain, but at least it would be built on solid foundations of honesty, respect, and true love. From the next room, he could hear Maria softly humming a lullaby for the twins, and that simple sound filled him with a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. It was the sound of a family, imperfect but genuine, starting anew, stronger than ever. The weekend passed in a surreal tranquility. The summer festival had been cancelled under the pretense that David had a mild cold, but in reality, he wanted time to process the changes in his life and be present for the children and for Maria, who still seemed to be emotionally recovering from recent events. Mr. David, are you sure you don't want me to prepare something special for lunch? I can make those ribs with cassava that you like so much. Maria was in the kitchen on Monday morning, and David noticed that she seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. You don't need to worry about that, Maria. By the way, we need to talk about some changes I want to implement here, at home. David served himself the coffee she had prepared, strong and aromatic as always. What kind of changes, Mr. David? There was a hint of apprehension in her voice. Good changes. I want to raise your salary, formalize some benefits, and... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I want you to feel more comfortable expressing your opinions about the boys, about the house. You know my children better than anyone. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Mr. David, you are already very generous with me. It's not generosity, Maria. It's recognition. And it's also selfishness on my part because I don't know what we would do without you. It was then that David's phone rang. Patricia's name appeared on the screen, and by the time 8:30 in the morning, he knew something was wrong. Patricia, good morning. What urgency is this? David, you need to come to the office now. We have a serious problem. His partner's voice was tense, laden with concern. What kind of problem? I prefer not to discuss it over the phone, but it has to do with your personal life, and it's affecting our business. David's stomach tightened. He had a suspicion of what it might be. I'm on my way. 15 minutes. After hanging up, David looked at Maria, who pretended not to have heard the conversation while organizing the twins' toys. Maria, I need to leave. I'll be back for lunch. Of course, Mr. David. I'll take good care of the boys. The office of Johnson and Associates operated on the 35th floor of one of the most modern buildings on Wall Street. When David arrived, he found Patricia in the conference room with a serious expression he knew well. It was the same face she made when they had to deal with problematic clients. David, sit down. Patricia, at 42, was a straightforward and practical woman who had helped build the company from its early years. Her red hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and she wore the grey suit she reserved for serious occasions. Patricia, what's going on? Jessica Anderson called 3 of our biggest clients yesterday. Patricia opened a folder on the table. She told them that you are having an inappropriate relationship with your housekeeper and that this is affecting your judgment in business. David felt the blood boil in his veins. She did what? She called Roberto Silveira from Silveira Construction, Marcia Campos from MC Investments, and Antonio Mendoza from Mendoza Group. She said you are emotionally unstable and that she was worried about the professional decisions you might make. This is defamation, Patricia. It's pure and simple revenge. I know that. You know that. But our clients... Patricia sighed heavily. Roberto Silveira called me this morning, worried about your emotional stability. Marcia Campos wants to reschedule the presentation for the mall in South Side, and Antonio Mendoza, well, he wants a meeting to discuss the continuity of the partnership. David stood up and walked to the panoramic window that showed the intense movement of Wall Street. Down below, thousands of people were rushing after their lives, their dreams, their problems, and he was there, trying to deal with a crisis created by the revenge of a scorned woman. Patricia, I need you to know exactly what happened between me and Jessica. David turned to face his partner. For the next 20 minutes, David told everything. The discovery of Jessica's true personality, how she had humiliated Maria, the veiled threats, the breakup. Patricia listened in silence, only making a few notes. David, I always thought that woman was a bit artificial, but I never imagined she was capable of this. Patricia closed her pen and looked at him. The question now is, how are we going to deal with the damage? Suggestions. First, let's schedule individual meetings with each of the affected clients. You will personally explain that you ended a relationship that wasn't working and that your professional life remains the same. Second, let's expedite the presentation of 2 projects that were scheduled for next month. Showing results is the best way to combat rumors. David nodded, but he knew the situation was more complicated than Patricia imagined. In the circles of high society in New York City, rumors had a life of their own, especially when they involved issues like social class and inappropriate relationships. Patricia, there's another thing. It's possible that Jessica won't stop here. What do you mean? She made it clear that she considered our class difference as something temporary, something that would be corrected when we got married. Now that this won't happen, she might try to hit me in other ways. As if it were a prophecy, David's phone rang at that exact moment. It was a number he didn't recognize. David Johnson. Mr. Johnson, this is Dr. Fernanda Costa from the Child Protective Services in the Upper East Side area. We received an anonymous report regarding the care situation of your children. We would like to schedule a technical visit. The world stopped for David. Patricia immediately noticed that something was very wrong by the expression on her partner's face. "What kind of report, Doctor?" "I prefer not to discuss details over the phone, Mr. Johnson, but someone reported concerns about the children's care conditions and possible neglect. Can we schedule for tomorrow? At 2 p.m. "Of course, Doctor. I will be home waiting." After he hung up, David stood in silence for a few seconds, processing the magnitude of the attack he was facing. "David, what happened?" Patricia approached, concerned. "Jessica filed a report with Child Protective Services claiming that my children are not being well cared for. She can't do that. It's an abuse of the system. She can, and she did. And now I need to prove that I am a competent father and that Maria is an exemplary caregiver." David grabbed his car keys. "Patricia, cancel all my appointments. For today and tomorrow, I need to go home and prepare for this visit. David, do you want me to call our lawyer?" "Not yet. First, I will see what Child Protective Services has to say. But have Dr. Henry Collins' number handy. If this escalates, we will need legal help." Throughout the drive back home, David thought about the maliciousness of the attack. Jessica knew exactly where to hit him to cause the maximum damage. Questioning his competence as a father, putting the custody of his children at risk, tarnishing Maria's reputation. It was the perfect revenge from someone who knew his deepest vulnerabilities. When he arrived at the apartment, he found Maria playing with the twins on the living room rug. Michael was trying to crawl toward a colorful toy, while Ethan watched everything attentively, as always. "Maria, I need to talk to you about something very serious." David's tone made her immediately stand up, leaving the babies with their toys. "Is something wrong, Mr. David?" "Jessica filed a report with Child Protective Services claiming that my children are not being well cared for. They are going to make a technical visit tomorrow." Maria paled instantly. "Mr. David, if it's because of me, I can—" "Maria, stop." David gently held her arms. "You are not going anywhere. We will face this together, because this house is a loving and safe home for my children, and anyone with two eyes can see that." That afternoon, David and Maria spent hours organizing documents, medical certificates, vaccination records, pediatric consultation records, everything that could demonstrate that Michael and Ethan were well cared for, healthy, and loved children. But deep down, David knew that the battle was just beginning. Jessica had declared war, and he needed to prepare to combat all the attacks that were yet to come. The question was, how far would she go in her thirst for revenge? Tuesday dawned with a clear sky over New York City, but the tension in the Upper East Side apartment was palpable. David had woken up at 5 a.m., unable to go back to sleep, and found Maria already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with her usual meticulous precision. "Mr. David, you barely touched your food last night. You need to eat something." She placed homemade sugar bread still warm on the table, fresh cheese she had bought at the local grocery store, and the strong coffee she knew he liked. "Maria, you are more nervous than I am. Your hands are shaking." David observed how she organized and reorganized the same objects on the kitchen counter. "It's just that, Mr. David, if they think I'm not good enough to care for the boys—" Her voice faltered, laden with a vulnerability she rarely showed. "Maria, look at me." David stood up and positioned himself in front of her. "You are the best caregiver my children could have. Anyone who spends 5 minutes in this house will notice the love and dedication with which you care for them." The twins, oblivious to the adults' tension, played happily on the living room rug. Michael had finally managed to crawl a few meters and was proud of his new achievement, while Ethan watched everything with his curious eyes, always attentive to his brother's movements. At 1:30 p.m., David did a final check of the apartment. Not that it was necessary. Maria kept the house immaculate. But he needed to do something to expend his nervous energy. The twins' rooms were organized with the precision of a hospital, the educational toys arranged so that any visitor could see the care invested in the children's development. "Mr. David, there is someone at the front desk is asking for you, sir." The intercom announced the arrival of the Child Protective Services team. "You can send them up." 2 minutes later, the doorbell rang. David took a deep breath and opened the door to find 2 women, one younger with a friendly appearance carrying a folder, and another older with a stern expression holding a tablet. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Dr. Fernanda Costa, and this is my assistant Juliana Santos. We're from Child Protective Services." The older woman, around 50 years old, wore a navy blazer and had her grey hair styled conservatively. "Welcome. Please come in." The 2 women entered and immediately began to observe the surroundings. David noticed their eyes scanning the elegant yet cozy decor, taking in the details that Maria had added, the well-kept plants, the framed photos of the twins at various stages of their growth, and the impeccable organization that did not sacrifice comfort. "Where are the children?" Dr. Fernanda consulted her notes. "They're in the living room with Maria, our caregiver. They just had lunch and are in their playtime before the afternoon nap." When they entered the living room, they found a scene that warmed David's heart. Maria was sitting on the floor with the 2 babies, singing a children's song, while Michael tried to mimic her gestures, and Ethan clapped his hands. It was a moment of pure joy and family connection. "Maria, these are the ladies from Child Protective Services who came to visit us." David made the introductions, noting how Juliana, the younger assistant, smiled at the affectionate interaction between Maria and the children. "Nice to meet you. I'm Maria Thompson, and I've been caring for Michael and Ethan since they were newborns." Maria stood up with dignity, but kept Ethan in her arms, who immediately snuggled against her. Dr. Fernanda observed everything with clinical attention. "Can we talk about the children's routine?" During the next hour, Maria explained in detail the twins' routine. The strictly followed feeding times, age-appropriate educational activities, preventive medical care, and stimulation of motor and cognitive development. Each of her responses demonstrated not only technical knowledge, but a deep understanding of each baby's individual needs. Michael is more energetic, so he needs activities that expend energy, like crawling and exploring toys. Ethan is more observant, enjoys music, and likes to sit in laps, listening to conversations. They have very different personalities. Maria spoke with the naturalness of someone who knows every detail of the children in her care. "And how does Mr. Johnson participate in the routine?" Dr. Fernanda directed her question to David. "I spend every morning with them before going to work. I come back for lunch whenever possible, and the evenings are exclusively dedicated to them. Weekends are entirely ours," David replied, but it was Juliana who asked the next question. "Mr. Johnson, the report alleged that you were neglecting the children's care due to being involved in an inappropriate relationship. Could you clarify this situation?" David felt anger rise but kept his voice calm and professional. "I recently ended a relationship with someone who did not fit our family dynamic. This person, clearly resentful, decided to use the child protection system as a form of personal revenge." "What kind of inadequacy?" Dr. Fernanda pressed. "My ex-girlfriend exhibited unhealthy jealousy of the affectionate relationship between Maria and my children. It reached the point of humiliating Maria when she thought I wasn't watching, treating her disrespectfully and trying to limit her contact with the children." Maria lowered her eyes, clearly uncomfortable with the subject, but Juliana noticed her reaction. "Maria, do you feel safe and respected working here?" "More than safe, Mum. This is the most loving family I've ever worked for. Mr. David treats me with great respect, and these boys," she looked at Michael and Ethan with obvious tenderness, "are like grandchildren to my heart." It was then that something unexpected happened. Ethan, who was in Maria's lap, reached out his little arms towards Dr. Fernanda as if wanting to go with her. The social worker, surprised, looked at David for permission. "You can take him. Ethan is like that. He loves meeting new people." David smiled, proud of his son's sociability. Dr. Fernanda picked up Ethan, and the baby immediately began to explore the necklace she was wearing, babbling happily. It was evident that he was a well-adjusted child, confident and used to positive interactions with adults. "Michael, come here, my prince," David called to his other son, who crawled quickly to him and stood up, supporting himself on his father's legs. The connection between father and son was undeniable. "Mr. Johnson," Juliana consulted her notes, "can we see the children's rooms and discuss the medical aspects of their care?" The inspection of the twins' rooms was revealing. The social workers found a perfectly adapted environment for babies, temperature-controlled, age-appropriate educational toys organized, quality hygiene products, safe cribs with always clean sheets. Maria opened the drawers, showing the clothes organized by size, emergency medications within their expiration dates, the digital thermometer, everything demonstrating meticulous care. "When was the last pediatric appointment?" Dr. Fernanda checked the vaccination record. 2 weeks ago, with Dr. Henry Collins at Mount Sinai Hospital. He has been monitoring the boys since birth. David showed the card with the next appointment scheduled. "And how do you handle medical emergencies?" "We have Dr. Henry's number programmed in our phones. We know the nearest pediatric emergency room, and I took a first aid course for babies right after they were born," Maria answered confidently. Juliana made several positive notes, and David noticed that she seemed increasingly convinced of the quality of the family environment she had found. "Mr. Johnson," Dr. Fernanda returned Ethan to Maria's arms, "I need to ask a direct question. The report suggested that you might be neglecting the children's care by prioritizing a personal relationship. Based on what we saw here today, this allegation has. Doctor, look around you. See how well my children are cared for, healthy and happy. See how they respond to me and Maria with affection and trust. This is the result of love and dedication, not negligence." David picked up Michael, and the baby immediately snuggled against him. The two assistants exchanged glances, and Dr. Fernanda made some final notes. "Mr. Johnson, Maria, we appreciate your cooperation. We will prepare our report and get in touch in a few days." After they left, David sat heavily on the sofa, finally allowing the accumulated tension to dissipate. "Maria, I think it went well. They seemed impressed with our organization." "Mr. David," the younger lady was taking a lot of good notes. "I saw her writing about how the boys are well cared for and happy." Maria finally smiled genuinely for the first time in 2 days. That night, while bathing the twins, David reflected on how Jessica's attempt to destroy his family had in fact shown everyone, including a professional government team, how solid and loving his family structure was. Her revenge had backfired, proving exactly the opposite of what she intended to demonstrate. October arrived, bringing with it the characteristic renewal of springtime in New York City. The trees in Central Park, visible from David's apartment window, displayed new green buds, and a different energy lingered in the air. In the Upper East Side apartment, life had resumed its calm rhythm after the visit from Child Protective Services, which resulted in a completely favorable report for the family. "Mr. David, a letter has arrived for you. It seems important." Maria handed him an official envelope as he finished his breakfast. The letterhead from Child Protective Services made David's heart race for a moment, but the content of the letter completely reassured him. The final report classified the family environment as exemplary, highlighting the exceptional care demonstrated by the caregiver, and the evident loving and healthy relationship between father and children, the complaint had been officially filed as unfounded and possibly motivated by personal revenge. "Maria, look at this!" David showed her the letter, which she read with growing attention. "Thank God, Mr. David. I knew they would see the truth." Tears of relief streamed down her face. "But I confess I was afraid of losing you all." "Lose us? Never, Maria. You are part of this family." The twins, now 7 months old, were becoming more active and communicative every day. Michael had become an expert at crawling and explored every corner of the apartment under Maria's watchful eye, while Ethan had developed a fascination for children's books, becoming mesmerized by the colors and textures of the pages. "Mr. David," Maria hesitated for a moment, as if gathering courage to speak. "May I ask a personal question?" "Of course, Maria, you can ask anything." Do you regret ending things with Mrs. Jessica? I mean, she was beautiful, from your social class." David stopped stirring his coffee and looked directly into Maria's eyes. It was the first time in months that she had touched on the subject of the ended relationship. "Maria, I regret only one thing. Not having seen her true personality sooner, allowing her to treat you that way, even if for a short time." He paused, carefully choosing his next words. "You know what I've learned from all this? That social class has nothing to do with character. That beauty without kindness is worthless. That a person can have all the degrees and money in the world and still be petty and cruel." Maria lowered her eyes, clearly moved by his words. "And I've learned one more thing, Maria." David leaned closer to her as she organized the bottles for the baby's afternoon snack. "I've learned that love can arise in the most unexpected places, between people that society says shouldn't be together." She completely stopped what she was doing and stared at him, as if unsure she had understood correctly. "Mr. David, what do you mean?" "I mean that in the last few months you have become much more than an employee to me, Maria. You have become my companion, my confidant, my best friend." David took a deep breath. "And at some point during this journey, without me realizing it, you became the woman I admire, respect, and love." The silence that followed was filled only with the happy babbling of the twins, who were playing on the living room rug. Maria looked at him with a mix of shock, disbelief, and something that seemed like hope. "Mr. David, I can't. We are from different worlds. Are we? Maria, look around you. This is our world. You, me, and our boys. What else matters beyond that? But people will talk. They will judge. You are an important businessman, and I am just a housekeeper from the countryside." David gently held her hands, calloused from work, but always tender with his children. "Maria, you are not just anything. You are the most integral, caring, and courageous woman I know. You are the person my children love most in the world after me. You are the one who cares for us when we are sick, who worries about our well-being, who has turned this house into a home." Tears were now flowing freely down Maria's face. "Mr. David, I also have developed feelings for you, but I always thought it was wrong, that I had no right. You have every right to love and be loved, Maria, and I want very much to have the right to love you." Michael chose that exact moment to crawl over to them, tugging at the hem of David's pants and babbling happily, as if approving of the conversation he had witnessed. Ethan, not wanting to be left out, also crawled over, and soon the four of them were gathered in a circle on the kitchen floor. "Look at that, they approve!" David laughed, picking up Michael in his arms. "Our children have good taste in choosing a mother." "Mr. David, Maria, please stop calling me Mr. David. My name is David, just David." "David?" She tried the name on her lips, as if it were the first time she had said it. "Are you sure about this? Sure you want to face the prejudices, the nasty comments?" "Maria, I've already faced a vengeful ex-girlfriend, a business crisis, and an investigation by Child Protective Services. Do you think I'm afraid of high society gossip?" He laughed, but then became serious. "What I'm afraid of is losing you, losing the chance to build a real family with the person I love the most." That afternoon, while the babies slept, David and Maria talked for hours. They spoke about their fears, their hopes, about how it would be to navigate a relationship that challenged social conventions. Maria shared about her life in the Appalachian Mountains, how she sent money to her elderly mother, about the children she had raised alone after becoming a widow at a young age. "David, I need you to understand one thing. I will never be a socialite. I will never know how to behave at those fancy events you attend. Maria, I'm tired of those events. I'm tired of the superficiality, the empty conversations, the people who only care about appearances." David held her hand. "I would much rather stay home with you and the boys, listening to your stories from the Appalachian Mountains and watching you teach them lullabies." "And what if your friends, your clients, don't accept it?" "Then they aren't true friends. And as for clients, my work speaks for itself. Anyone who wants to work with me, because of my professional competence, will be welcome. Those who care more about my personal life than my work don't need to be my clients." When the twins woke up from their nap, they found a subtly different atmosphere at home. The adults seemed more relaxed, more connected. During dinner, for the first time in months, genuine laughter echoed through the apartment. "Maria," David said, as she gave Gabriel the last bottle of the day, "I want to ask an important question." "Go ahead." "Do you want to marry me?" The bottle almost slipped from her hands. "David, are you—" "Serious. Completely serious. I want you to be officially my wife, the stepmother of my children, and—" He smiled. "I want us to have the chance to give little brothers to Michael and Gabriel, if you want." Maria looked at Gabriel, who was watching her with his big, curious eyes, then at Michael, who was playing in David's lap, and finally at the man she had learned to love. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want to marry you." That night, after they put the twins to sleep together for the first time as a couple, David and Maria stood on the apartment balcony watching the lights of New York City. The future still held challenges. David knew that. But for the first time since the death of Sarah, he felt that he had a complete family again. "David," Maria nestled in his arms, "thank you for teaching me that love can happen between any two people, regardless of where they came from. Thank you for teaching me that the only thing that really matters is the kindness in people's hearts." Down below, the city continued its frantic pace, but on the 30th floor of the Upper East Side, a new family had been born, built on the strongest foundations possible: love, respect, and mutual dedication. December arrived, enveloping New York City in a festive atmosphere that even reached the most sophisticated corners of the Upper East Side. In David's apartment, preparations for the new family's first Christmas were in full swing. The twins, now 9 months old, delighted in the colorful lights of the tree that Maria had insisted on setting up in the corner of the living room. "David, are you sure your parents will accept our situation?" Maria nervously adjusted the navy blue dress he bought especially for the Christmas dinner. It was simple but elegant, chosen with the care of someone who wanted to make a good first impression. "My parents will love you just as I do, and they will adore seeing how happy and well cared for Michael and Gabriel are." David adjusted his tie in the bedroom mirror, preparing for one of the most important nights of their lives. 6 months had passed since David proposed to Maria. The time had been used to formalize their union in an intimate ceremony at the courthouse, with only Patricia as a witness and the twins present in their strollers adorned with white bows. Maria had officially become Maria Johnson, and the twins' birth certificates now listed her as their adoptive mother. "Michael, stop trying to eat the star on the tree!" Maria rushed to the baby, who had managed to crawl to the Christmas decorations and was trying to put all the ornaments in his mouth. Gabriel watched the scene from his baby seat, shaking a rattle and laughing at his brother's antics. The intercom rang at exactly 7 p.m. David took a deep breath. It was time to officially introduce his new family to his parents, Joseph and Helen Johnson, who had just returned from a 2-month trip to Europe. "Son!" Helen Johnson entered the apartment with the natural elegance of a 65-year-old woman accustomed to the best social circles in New York. Her silver hair was impeccably styled, and she wore a discreet yet refined Chanel outfit. "David, how I've missed you." Joseph Johnson, at 68, maintained the dignified presence that had made him a respected corporate lawyer. His green eyes, identical to his son's, scanned the room in search of his grandchildren. "Mom, Dad, I want to introduce you to Maria, my wife." David placed his arm protectively around Maria's waist. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity for Maria. Then Helen stepped forward with a genuine smile. "Maria, what a pleasure to finally meet you in person. David has told us how wonderfully you care for our grandchildren." Helen extended her hand to greet her daughter-in-law, and Maria noticed it was clear that there was no hint of condescension in her gesture. "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Helen. Thank you very much for welcoming me into your family." "Mrs. Helen, no way. Now you are my daughter-in-law. Call me Helen, or better yet, call me Mom, if you feel comfortable." The affection in the older woman's voice was undeniable. Joseph Johnson approached and observed Maria with attention. "You are the woman who saved my son and my grandsons, aren't you? The one who turned this house into a home again." "Mr. Joseph, Dad." Joseph gently interrupted her. "Call me Dad, and thank you for taking care of our family when we needed it the most." At that moment, Michael decided to get attention by crawling over to his grandparents and, leaning against Joseph's leg, babbling happily. Ethan, not wanting to be left out, also crawled across the carpet to the group. "My grandsons, how you've grown!" Helen bent down to pick up Ethan, while Joseph lifted Michael. "And how chubby and healthy you are. Maria takes such good care of everything. They wake up singing with joy every morning." David watched the family's interaction with evident emotion. During dinner, prepared by Maria with recipes she had learned from Helen during their phone calls over the past months, the conversations flowed naturally. Helen asked about the Appalachian Mountains, showed interest in the culinary traditions of the region, and even requested the recipe for the homemade caramel dessert that Maria had made for dessert. "Maria," Joseph said, while savoring his second piece of dessert, "I want you to know that when David told us about your relationship, the only thing that mattered to us was knowing if you made him happy, and seeing him now, seeing how the boys respond to you." He paused, emotional. "It's more than obvious that you've brought joy back to our family." "Dad is right," Helen added. "In the past months, David's calls were filled with joy, with plans for the future. We haven't seen him like this in a long time." It was then that Helen took a small blue velvet box from her bag. "Maria, this was my grandmother's ring. It has been passed down through the family for 3 generations. I want you to have it." Maria was speechless upon seeing the simple yet elegant ring with a small diamond set in white gold. "Helen, I can't accept this. It's too precious for your family." "Exactly for that reason it should stay with you. You are family now." Helen held Maria's hand and slid the ring onto her ring finger, And I want my great-grandchildren to know that the woman who raised them with so much love wore their great-grandmother's ring. Tears streamed freely down Maria's face, but they were tears of pure happiness. David held her free hand, moved by the complete acceptance his parents were showing. "There's one more thing." Joseph stood up and went to the Christmas tree, retrieving a large gift envelope. "David, this is for you. A little belated wedding gift." David opened the envelope and found the deed to a house in a suburban area in New Jersey. A two-story building with a large backyard, located on a quiet, tree-lined street. "Dad, Mom, this is too much." "It's nothing too much for the family that brought happiness back to us," Helen explained. "And it's a better place to raise the boys, with a backyard to play in, space to grow." Maria looked at the pictures of the house with tears of gratitude. "It's so beautiful. It looks like the houses in the Appalachian Mountains that I always dreamed of having." "Then it's decided," David announced. "We'll move in the new year, our new family and our new home." At midnight, while watching the fireworks lighting up the New York sky, David and Maria were on the balcony with the twins. Michael was sleeping in her arms, while Ethan rested in David's. Joseph and Helen had returned home, promising weekly visits to the new house. "David," Maria whispered so as not to wake Michael, "a year ago I could never have imagined that I would be here, married to you, with our children, accepted by your family." "A year ago I was lost, Maria. You taught me that family is not about blood or social class. It's about love, care, dedication." David kissed Ethan's forehead, who smiled in his sleep. "You taught me that true love happens when two people commit to caring for each other unconditionally. And you taught me that I deserve to be loved, that my background does not define my worth." Maria looked at the ring now shining on her finger. "You gave me a family I never dreamed I could have." At that moment, as if sensing their parents' emotions, Michael and Ethan woke up almost simultaneously, looked at each other, and began to babble happily, as if they were talking about the fireworks in the sky. "Look at that, they're celebrating too." David chuckled softly. "Happy New Year, my love." Maria kissed David gently. "Happy New Year to the best family a man could have." As the city celebrated the arrival of a new year down below, on the terrace of the apartment in the Upper East Side, 4 hearts beat in perfect harmony. David had learned that true love is not found. It's built, day after day, with simple gestures, mutual care, and the courage to challenge prejudices. Maria had discovered that she deserved to be happy, regardless of where she was born or what her profession had been. And Michael and Ethan, they simply knew they had the best parents in the world. A dad who loved them unconditionally, and a mum who chose to love them as if they had been born from her own heart. 18 months after losing his first wife, David finally understood that life had given him a second chance to be happy. And this time, happiness was built on the strongest foundations possible: genuine love, mutual respect, and the certainty that family is much more than blood. It is choice. It is care. It is love in action every day. The future was full of possibilities. The new home in a suburban area in New Jersey awaited them. Perhaps new little brothers for Michael and Ethan. Certainly many years of simple yet profound happiness. Because sometimes the most perfect happy ending is not born from fairy tales, but from the courage to love beyond social conventions and the wisdom to recognize the true treasure when it appears in our lives.